When a woman misses you, the first place it shows is not in dramatic confessions or emotional outbursts, but in attention. Attention is the currency of the mind. Wherever her attention goes repeatedly, that's where her emotional energy is invested. And this is why one of the clearest signs she's thinking about you is that she finds small, almost unnecessary reasons to reach out. Not because she has to, but because her mind keeps circling back to you. She might send a message that looks casual, even random, a meme, a short question. This reminded me of you. On the surface, it seems insignificant, but psychologically, it's anything but. The human brain does not seek contact without emotional motivation. When someone occupies your thoughts, the mind looks for justification to reconnect, even if the reason feels thin, especially if she's trying not to reveal how much she misses you. What's important here is not what she says, but that she says something at all. If a woman truly isn't thinking about you, silence is easy. Distance creates forgetting. But when she misses you, distance creates tension, and that tension needs release. Communication becomes the safest outlet. You'll also notice timing patterns. She may reach out late at night, early in the morning, or during moments when people tend to feel reflective or emotionally open. These are the times when distractions fall away and the mind drifts toward what or who matters. Missing someone is rarely loud. It's quiet. It shows up when the noise fades. Another subtle indicator is how she frames the interaction. She may ask questions that don't require urgent answers. Questions about your day, your mood, or your thoughts. These are not logistical questions, they're emotional probes. They allow her to feel close to you without admitting that closeness is what she's seeking. This is especially true if she values emotional control or fears vulnerability. Reaching out indirectly protects her ego while still satisfying the emotional pull. There's also a philosophical layer here worth noticing. Missing someone is not just about absence, it's about meaning. She misses you because your presence represented something. Safety, excitement, understanding, inspiration. When she reaches out, she's not only trying to reconnect with you, but with the version of herself she feels when you're around. People don't miss individuals as much as they miss how they feel in their presence. This is why her messages may carry a certain warmth, even if she tries to keep them light, a subtle softness in her tone, a familiarity that hasn't faded. Emotional memory lingers longer than physical proximity. And when that memory is activated, the desire to reconnect becomes almost automatic. Now, here's where many men make a critical mistake. They either overinterpret and push too hard, or they underinterpret and dismiss it entirely. Both responses break the natural rhythm. The right approach is grounded awareness. You don't need to call it out. You don't need to confront her with, "You miss me, don't you?" That forces her into defense. Instead, respond with calm presence. Let the connection breathe. If she's reaching out because she misses you, consistency and emotional steadiness will do more than pressure ever could. Missing someone is already a form of emotional risk. When she takes that risk, even subtly, she's watching how you handle it. Do you remain centered, or do you grasp? Do you stay grounded, or do you rush to define things? Your response teaches her whether it's safe to miss you even more. And that leads to a simple but powerful truth. When a woman reaches out without needing a reason, she's already given you one. The question isn't whether she's thinking about you. The question is whether you're paying enough attention to recognize it, and wise enough not to rush what's quietly unfolding. When a woman misses you, one of the most revealing shifts happens in how she communicates, or more precisely, how she finds reasons to re-enter your mental and emotional space without openly admitting that you're already there. This is where psychology becomes subtle. She doesn't say, "I miss you." Instead, she sends a message that doesn't really need to be sent. She reacts to something trivial. She asks a question she could easily answer herself. On the surface, it looks ordinary. Underneath, it's a quiet emotional reach. From a psychological standpoint, this behavior is rooted in attachment and emotional regulation. When someone occupies your inner world, the mind looks for ways to restore connection, even if only symbolically. A text, a meme, a random check-in, these are not about information, they're about emotional proximity. She's not trying to learn something from you, she's trying to feel you again. And the more restrained or guarded she is as a person, the more indirect this communication becomes. You'll notice that the timing is rarely accidental. She reaches out when something reminds her of you, but also when she's emotionally unoccupied, late at night, early in the morning, or during moments of boredom or stress. These are the times when defenses are lower and the mind drifts toward what feels familiar and grounding. You become that psychological anchor, even if she never names it as such. What's important here is to understand the difference between attention and attachment. Attention can be scattered and impulsive. Attachment is selective. When she misses you, her communication isn't random. It's consistent in pattern, even if inconsistent in frequency. She may disappear for days, but when she returns, the tone is warm, personal, and emotionally open in subtle ways. She might reference shared memories, inside jokes, or past conversations. That's the mind revisiting emotional territory that feels safe and meaningful. There's also an internal conflict at play. Missing someone creates vulnerability, and vulnerability threatens the sense of control. So instead of expressing longing directly, she disguises it as casual interaction. This allows her to satisfy the emotional impulse without fully exposing herself. In psychological terms, it's a compromise between desire and self-protection. She wants connection, but she wants to maintain dignity and emotional leverage. Men often misread this because they're trained to look for explicit signals, but emotional intelligence requires you to observe patterns rather than statements. If she didn't care, silence would be easy. Indifference doesn't need excuses. Missing someone does. That's why the communication feels slightly unnecessary, slightly forced, yet emotionally charged. It's presence disguised as coincidence. Now, how you respond matters more than you think. If you become overly available, you collapse the emotional tension she's unconsciously maintaining. If you're cold or dismissive, you reinforce her fear of vulnerability. The balanced response is calm, grounded, and present, engaged without chasing. This signals emotional stability, which is precisely what makes someone feel safe enough to miss you in the first place. Missing you doesn't mean she wants chaos, intensity, or pressure. It means your presence created a sense of psychological ease that her mind wants to return to. And when a woman's mind keeps returning to you on its own, that's not an accident. That's attachment forming quietly. So don't look for dramatic confessions. Look for repeated, unnecessary bridges back to you. When someone misses you, they don't always say it, but their behavior keeps finding ways to close the distance. And the question you should reflect on is simple. When she reaches out, are you someone who adds calm to her mind or noise? Because people miss what brings them peace. When a woman misses you, one of the most revealing signs is how consistently you appear in her mental landscape, even when there's no immediate reason for it. This doesn't always show up as dramatic gesture or emotional confessions. Instead, it emerges quietly through attention to detail. She remembers things you said weeks ago, brings up moments you barely recall, or references small habits of yours that you didn't think anyone noticed. Psychologically, this is significant. The human mind doesn't store neutral information with such clarity. We remember what carries emotional weight. When she recalls the tone of your voice, the way you reacted in a specific situation, or a passing comment you made, it's because your presence has become emotionally encoded. What's happening beneath the surface is repetition. Missing someone means the mind returns to them again and again. Your image, your words, and the emotional atmosphere you create replay internally. This repetition strengthens neural pathways associated with you, making your presence feel familiar even in absence. She may not consciously say, "I miss him," but her mind is already doing the work of attachment. And because she may not want to expose that vulnerability, it comes out sideways, through memory, attentiveness, and subtle references rather than direct admission. You'll often notice this in the way she asks questions. They aren't random. They're specific. She asks how something turned out that you mentioned long ago, or she checks in on a situation you didn't expect her to remember. This signals that she's been thinking about you between interactions. Philosophically speaking, attention is one of the purest forms of value. We pay attention to what matters, and we neglect what doesn't. When her attention toward you remains sharp over time, absence hasn't diminished your importance. It's amplified it. There's also a deeper emotional mechanism at play here. Missing someone often creates a quiet internal dialogue. She replays conversations, reinterprets moments, and imagines alternative outcomes. This reflective process naturally increases awareness of details. She may suddenly notice patterns in you, your consistency, your flaws, your strengths. And paradoxically, this reflection can intensify longing because clarity breeds attachment. The more clearly we see someone, the more real they become in our inner world. Another subtle indicator is how she mirrors you emotionally when you reconnect. She seems immediately tuned in, as if the emotional thread was never broken. That's because, in her mind, it wasn't. Emotional continuity is a strong sign of missing someone. While physical distance may exist, psychological closeness remains intact. She doesn't need time to warm up to you again because she never fully disconnected. This continuity often surprises men, who assume silence equals detachment, but silence can simply mean restraint, not absence of feeling. It's also important to understand why she may not openly express missing you. For many women, admitting they miss someone feels like surrendering emotional leverage or exposing vulnerability too soon. So instead, they demonstrate it through competence, by remembering, by understanding, by staying emotionally aligned without making demands. This is a form of emotional self-control, not indifference, and it requires you to be perceptive enough to notice what's being shown instead of what's being said. The real test is not whether she says she misses you, but whether your presence seems to already exist in her mind before you arrive. When someone has been thinking about you, conversations flow faster, emotional resonance feels immediate, and there's a sense of familiarity that doesn't need rebuilding. That's the psychological residue of missing someone. So the question becomes not, does she say she misses me, but does her attention suggest, I've been on her mind even when I wasn't around? Because attention, memory, and emotional continuity don't lie. They are the quiet evidence of absence being felt. And the reflection to leave with is this: when someone carries you with them in thought, they've already given you something rare, space in their inner world. The responsibility then is not to chase that feeling, but to honor it with presence, clarity, and self-respect when you meet it. When a woman misses you, one of the clearest signs is not what she says, but how she subtly tries to remain present in your life without directly asking for closeness. This is where her behavior becomes psychologically fascinating. She may not reach out with obvious "I miss you" messages, but she finds indirect ways to stay connected. She reacts to your stories, likes posts she knows you'll notice, sends you something random that reminded her of you, or brings up old memories casually in conversation. On the surface, these actions look small, even insignificant, but psychologically they reveal something deeper. You occupy mental space she hasn't been able to clear. From a psychological perspective, the human mind does not revisit what it has fully let go of. Attention is a form of emotional currency. We invest it where attachment still exists. When she keeps inserting herself into your awareness without demanding anything, it's often because she wants to feel close without risking vulnerability. She wants reassurance that the emotional bridge between you still exists, even if she's not ready to walk across it openly. What's important to understand here is that missing someone doesn't always lead to direct pursuit. For many women, especially emotionally intelligent or self-protective ones, longing expresses itself through controlled proximity. She wants to feel you nearby, but on her terms. She might ask questions that seem practical or neutral, yet carry emotional weight. How have you been lately? Did that thing work out for you? These are not logistical questions, they're emotional check-ins, disguised as casual conversation. There's also a philosophical layer to this behavior. When someone misses you, they're wrestling with absence. Absence creates discomfort because it forces the mind to confront what mattered. Instead of confronting that discomfort directly, she may manage it by creating micro-connections, small interactions that momentarily relieve the feeling of distance. These interactions help her regulate emotion without fully exposing it. You may notice that she times these moments carefully. She appears when you've been quiet. She resurfaces when you seem to be moving forward. This isn't manipulation in the dramatic sense. It's attachment anxiety mixed with desire. On some level, she wants to confirm that she still matters to you, that she hasn't been replaced emotionally, that the bond hasn't dissolved without her consent. The mistake many men make is dismissing this behavior as meaningless or reading it as mixed signals. In reality, it's often a sign of emotional conflict. She misses you, but she's also managing fear. Fear of rejection, fear of appearing needy, fear of reopening something she's not sure how to handle. So she stays close enough to feel you, but far enough to feel safe. The deeper insight here is this: people who are emotionally detached don't hover. They don't check in indirectly. They don't maintain low-level contact just to see where you're at. That behavior belongs to someone who hasn't emotionally resolved the separation. You are still part of her inner dialogue, even if she hasn't admitted that out loud. This is where your response matters. If you react with neediness, you confirm her fear. If you react with coldness, you reinforce the distance. Emotional maturity lies in calm presence. You acknowledge the connection without chasing it. You respond, but you don't overinvest. This balance communicates strength and emotional stability, qualities that make her feel safer acknowledging what she already feels. Missing someone is rarely loud. More often, it's quiet, controlled, and subtle. It lives in the spaces between messages, in the timing, in the small efforts to stay visible without asking for attention outright. When you learn to read these signs, you stop guessing and start understanding. And here's the reflection to leave with: when someone finds ways to stay connected without a reason, it's because emotionally, you are still the reason. When a woman misses you, one of the most revealing signs is how she begins to insert herself into your life in subtle, indirect ways. She may not openly say, "I miss you," because that sentence carries vulnerability, exposure, and risk. Instead, she looks for safer pathways, small gestures that allow her to stay connected without having to declare her emotional state. Psychologically, this is a form of emotional regulation. She's balancing desire with self-protection. You might notice she suddenly has a reason to reach out that feels unnecessary on the surface. A random question, a link to something you talked about weeks ago, a casual "this reminded me of you." These moments aren't accidental. When someone occupies your thoughts, the mind constantly scans the environment for associations. Missing someone sharpens attention. Ordinary experiences become emotional triggers, and she feels compelled to share them with you because connection eases the discomfort of absence. There's also a deeper philosophical layer here. Human beings are wired to reduce emotional distance when attachment is activated, but when direct expression feels unsafe because of pride, fear of rejection, or uncertainty about your feelings, the mind chooses indirect action. She invests quietly, she checks in, she supports you from the background. This allows her to feel close to you without risking outright rejection. You may see this in how she becomes unexpectedly supportive. She encourages your goals, listens carefully when you speak about your struggles, or remembers things that even you forgot you mentioned. This isn't casual kindness. Attention is a currency, and people spend it where emotional value exists. When she misses you, her investment increases, not decreases. Absence doesn't make her forget. It intensifies her focus. What's important to understand is that this kind of investment often comes with restraint. She doesn't overwhelm you. She doesn't demand reassurance. In fact, she may do the opposite, keeping her tone light, controlled, almost neutral. This restraint is not a lack of feeling. It's evidence of it. Emotional maturity, especially in women who have been hurt before, often shows up as careful containment rather than dramatic expression. From a psychological perspective, this is also a testing phase. By investing indirectly, she's observing how you respond. Do you reciprocate? Do you notice? Do you value her presence, even when it's subtle? She's gathering data, not consciously perhaps, but instinctively. Missing you pushes her toward deconnection, but self-respect demands that she not chase blindly. There's a mistake many men make at this point. They interpret subtle investment as friendliness and dismiss it, or worse, they take it for granted. But emotional investment is one of the clearest indicators of attachment. Time, energy, thought, these are finite resources. When she gives them to you without obligation, it means you occupy space in her inner world. At a deeper level, this behavior reflects something universal about human connection. We don't just miss people in moments of loneliness. We miss them when our identity feels incomplete without their presence. When she invests in you indirectly, she's trying to maintain a sense of continuity, of us, even when circumstances or courage prevent her from saying it outright. If you're paying attention, this is an invitation, not an invitation to demand more, but an invitation to respond with awareness and steadiness. You don't need to force a confession out of her. You don't need to push. What you need is presence, consistency, and emotional intelligence. Meet her investment with grounded reciprocity, because when someone misses you, they're not asking you to rescue them from their feelings. They're asking quietly if you see them, if you value the connection, and if you're capable of meeting depth with depth. And here's the reflection to leave with. When you learn to recognize quiet investment, you stop chasing loud validation, and you start building connections rooted in mutual awareness, not emotional noise. When a woman misses you, one of the clearest yet most misunderstood signs is that she begins to test your emotional presence rather than openly confessing her longing. This is not manipulation in the crude sense, it's psychological caution. Missing someone creates vulnerability, and vulnerability feels dangerous when it isn't reciprocate. So instead of saying, "I miss you," she asks questions, creates small emotional gaps, or changes her responsiveness to see whether you step forward or disappear. You might notice her taking longer to reply than usual, then suddenly re-engaging with warmth. Or she might bring up memories you shared, only to quickly change the subject. These are not accidents, they are probes. She's checking whether you still occupy the same emotional space she does. The mind, when uncertain, seeks evidence. Her behavior is her way of gathering proof without risking rejection. Psychologically, this comes from a tension between desire and self-respect. She wants to feel chosen, not merely tolerated. If she openly admits she misses you and you respond passively, the imbalance would be painful. So she tests instead. She watches how you respond to distance, whether you lean in or pull away. This is why men often misread these moments as inconsistency or loss of interest, when in reality they are moments of emotional evaluation. There's also something deeper at play here. When someone misses you, they are not just missing your presence, they are missing how they feel when they are seen by you. That feeling is powerful. It ties into identity. So when she tests your emotional presence, she is asking a silent question: do I still matter to you the way you matter to me? This is not a trivial question. It goes to the core of attachment and security. You might notice that she becomes more curious about your life during this phase. She asks indirect questions about your plans, your mood, the people you spend time with. Not interrogations, but gentle checks. This curiosity is not control. It's longing, looking for reassurance. Missing someone heightens awareness, and awareness seeks confirmation. Philosophically speaking, this is where responsibility comes in. If you sense these tests and respond with clarity rather than games, you stabilize the emotional field. Clarity does not mean oversharing or chasing. It means consistency. When your words and actions align, you remove ambiguity. And ambiguity is what fuels anxiety when someone misses you. Many men fail here because they respond defensively. They withdraw, become sarcastic, or try to regain control by playing harder to get. This escalates the test into a silent battle. But strength is not about withholding. Strength is about grounded presence. When you remain steady, emotionally available without being needy, you answer her unspoken question. It's also important to understand that these tests are temporary. They occur in moments of uncertainty, not certainty. If she truly did not miss you, there would be no testing at all. Indifference is simple. Testing is complex. It requires emotional energy, attention, and risk. No one invests that unless something meaningful is at stake. What matters most is how you interpret these moments. If you see them as attacks, you will respond with defense. If you see them as signals, you will respond with intention. The difference between those two responses often determines whether emotional distance grows or closes. So when you notice her pulling slightly away, becoming subtly curious, or shifting her tone, don't rush to label it as drama. Ask instead what emotion might be underneath. Often, it is absence. Often it is longing. Often it is the quiet confession she is not yet ready to make. And here is the truth worth reflecting on. People who miss you are not asking for perfection. They are asking for presence. If you can offer that calmly and honestly, you won't need to guess how she feels. Her behavior will begin to align with her emotions, and the distance will dissolve on its own.